Hey Alex, how you doing?
Hey Cam, I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm doing very well myself. I am excited to have a bit of a chat about the encrypted Twitter DMs saga that's currently unfolding.
Yeah,
And
we're having this conversation here on Twitter
yeah,
as well,
on
unencrypted.
unencrypted. Unfortunately, maybe Elon could do something about that.
Yeah,
So we'll be having a bit of a chat about this through the Twitter space, and also publishing this as a video on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. Um,
yeah.
as well as the Elon Twitter DM saga. Also going to have a chat about Sam Altman, the OpenAI CEO.
One of the hottest Sams in the world right now.
Potentially. Yeah, it's a hot Sam. There's a lot of Sams out there. So what's your read right now on the way that encrypted Twitter DMs were received?
Well, my read is that they've been received terribly. And at the moment, it's not even clear if they are end-to-end encrypted.
Well, they're definitely not, I think. I think that it's kind of hilarious and kind of sad at the same time, because we chatted about this, I think, even on a previous Session Tapes episode. Elon came out saying the goal is to basically supersede Signal as like the sort of like, and
yeah, which was an interesting and bold thing to say. Apparently, you've been having some chats with old mate Moxie, Marlon Spike, who not a fan of us, but a very important figure in the end-to-end encrypted
I'd say very undeserved.
Yeah. I don't know what we did to annoy you, Moxie, but
if you're listening, Moxie, I don't know why you blocked us.
We're here to
but
talk.
Yeah, we'll chat.
So the end-to-end encrypted DMs has been received very badly.
Yeah.
And it seemed like Elon had great intentions, but there were some warning signs. And I remember having a conversation saying, Facebook tried to do this like 4 years ago with Messenger. And they've had just a nightmare of a situation trying to roll it out. And at the moment, it's still an opt-in only feature. And it seemed, well, at the moment, it was also opt-in only, and it's paywalled for Twitter.
It's insane. It's kind of like I can't see how it's worth it to them to release it in the state that it's in right now, especially after the comments that they've made and how much hype just generally Elon has made about encrypted Twitter DMs coming, because it's opt-in, which is really bad. You want everyone to have that same level of security. It's behind a paywall, and it's not even like one person who's paid. You both have to have Twitter Blue for it to work.
Which seems crazy, because I mean, in other situations where there are kind of asymmetric interactions like this, normally you have, if one person has the premium thing, then you can kind of share it and use it with them.
Yeah.
But in this case, no, if your buddies are not giving Elon $8 a month, then you're screwed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, only got themselves to blame, really.
It's only $8.
Who's not doing that?
It's
Who's
only
not
$8.
spending $8 on Twitter? So as well as that, files aren't encrypted, and group chats, which is pretty not ideal, suboptimal.
Well, it kind of comes back to this issue, which, it really seems like the complexity of end-to-end encryption was overlooked when these comments were originally made.
For sure.
And it's something that, for example, Signal has spent, I mean, I don't know, I haven't looked at Signal's books, but maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe $100 million, maybe more, I don't know exactly how much, developing the Signal protocol and making this extremely complex mechanism which allows you to end-to-end encrypt messages. And even then, most of the platforms that have successfully implemented the Signal protocol, that's all they're doing. They're just messaging apps.
Yeah.
And so when you're trying to bring that level of security into something like Twitter DMs, it causes a lot of issues. It's really hard. And end-to-end encryption implementation, although it's one of those things where end-to-end encryption really gets treated like a bare minimum, because it is a lot of the time, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. That doesn't mean that you can just flick a switch or just hook into a library and bang, you're done. You have end-to-end encryption and it's rolled out and it works for everybody. It's complex and it breaks all of the time.
Teams like Session, teams like Signal put so much time, effort, and resources into, like you were saying, having a tool that is essentially just for that and covering all of the other areas that relate to metadata, because obviously it's only one part of the whole thing to actually encrypt the contents of a message. So many different things that come into play that affect your privacy and your security. And it just speaks to like this massive, like either like ego and arrogance or just lack of understanding or like a big mix of both to sort of assume that you could just, like you said, sort of plug it into something like Twitter and just like stack it on top and it's going to offer the same level of privacy and security as something like Signal or Session.
It was just never going to do.
Yeah.
And it's interesting though, because it seems like Elon's pretty happy with things. You know, there were reports that he's been getting in touch with the people who built this for Twitter and saying, hey, nice job, happy with the direction you're going in. And we've seen that Twitter does seem to be testing in production a lot at the moment. You know,
for sure.
And you've noticed this because you spend a lot of time on Twitter.
Yeah,
and you're
crazy.
like, you'll log into Twitter one day and you're like, everything
changes
changed.
like every week. And I'm like, where's my lists? Why are they over here
Everything's
now?
moving around. It's very just like sporadically, just all over the place. Just really bizarre. And this might be a similar situation.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get the feeling that they're testing in prod. But this is the whole thing. This is why people are like really unhappy with this. Some people in the security space, because something like this, it's too important to test in prod. If like people are getting the wrong impression about how much security they actually get from this, then there can be real world consequences to that. You know what I mean? It's not the same as me not being able to find my Twitter lists in the UI. It's like people accidentally exposing information that could be dangerous to them if it falls into the wrong hands.
Yes, which is really, it's interesting because I think that even before Twitter ever claimed to have encryption in their DMs, people were probably doing this. People were probably exposing information which was sensitive in Twitter DMs because they just simply... no one had told them not to do that, and they didn't necessarily have the technical knowledge to know that was a bad idea. And it's a good thing. It's a good step for Twitter to have something as opposed to having nothing. But the danger does come, like you were saying, if you are Elon and you're going out there comparing yourself to Signal, and people understand the reputation that Signal has earned and deserves and has built over several years of being a trusted builder in this space. And you're saying, yeah, no, we're as good or better than that, or we're going to be as good as better. It really sends the wrong message to people. It sends the message that you're safe and that you can share information here and everything's going to be okay, when that is not the reality. And you really just have to be more honest with people in this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, they have, it's not even technically in encryption. And I saw in like their blog that they released, which to their credit, like was very transparent. They sort of had encryption like in quotations a lot of the time they used it, which kind of speaks to like how aware they are. But something that irked me about this as well is that they could have put some of this information in the app. It's like that is a pretty transparent disclosure to have the blog, but you can also just have a pop-up when people first use it and just say, hey, here are the limitations of this implementation. Be aware of that. And they've not done that, and that's presumably because it would be like egg on their face a bit, and they want to limit it as much.
Well, I don't even know that it's just egg on face. I think it's like fine in mail. Like you can get yourself into a lot of trouble making claims about the security and the encryption that you offer. We saw this happen to Zoom. We saw a bunch of messaging apps pop up that claimed to use end-to-end encryption, which weren't actually during like the pandemic years. So we've seen a number of companies get themselves into hot water by making claims like this. And as privacy becomes more and more of a topic that people are aware of and concerned about, I think we're going to see this happen more as well. We're going to see companies go, oh yeah, don't worry about it. It's encrypted. It's totally encrypted. Just like take my word for it. There's no stress.
Yeah, I feel like every now and again I come across like a messaging app that I'm not aware of, an encrypted messaging app, and I'm like, oh, I've never seen this before. And they just use all these like military grade encryption and like blah blah blah. There was an app. This story broke maybe a year or so ago. I hadn't heard of it before, but it had like a decent amount of users, like maybe a couple million, and it claimed to be end-to-end encryption, and there was just nothing. It was just like plain text in a database, and all of those messages just basically got leaked at some point.
Yeah.
Which is really bad. It's actually very bad.
Well, yeah, it is. It is bad. I would say it's quite bad.
But yeah, I think there's more awareness now in the tech industry that you can't get away with this. Like you said, Zoom was pretty high profile.
Yeah, they got into a lot of trouble. And they also, once again, kind of uncovered this reality of it's really hard to end-to-end encrypt things, and it's really hard to end-to-end encrypt video.
Yeah.
Especially live streamed video. And so when they were claiming this, everyone was like, oh, really? That's cool. And then they were like, oh, wait, really? That's not cool.
Yeah.
What you're doing is not okay. But, you know, overall, I think that we're heading in a positive direction, maybe, with these Twitter encrypted DMs.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to heap too much praise on it, because I think really what you should do is just build out something which works first and then roll it out.
I'm pretty optimistic about the iterations on the implementation. I think it's going to get a lot better. I'm unsure whether to think Elon is ever going to take it out from behind the paywall, because he really needs people to give him money to use Twitter at the moment. With everything that's going on with the advertisers, it's just bringing in a lot less revenue. And he did spend like $50 billion on it. So it's possible that like something that they're putting so much of their resources into may never come out from behind the paywall. Maybe that's pessimistic, and that would be a big problem, because kind of a lot of the value of this comes from it being as broadly distributed to users as possible, so that as much communication can be end-to-end encrypted as possible.
Yeah, it comes back to this idea of privacy being a bit of a public good. You know, like if only 10% of people have privacy, well, realistically, no, they don't.
Yeah.
Because, you know, differentially, they can be de-anonymized, or their privacy can be impacted because they're part of such a small group.
Yeah, it's kind of like a herd immunity.
It is a bit of a herd immunity type of situation, yeah. So if almost nobody, and this is the problem that Facebook has, you know, I think that they've been pretty upfront, and that, you know, they're using the Signal protocol about saying, yeah, we want people to use end-to-end encryption. We want to roll this out on our platform. But it's such a nightmare to actually roll it out. And it's so difficult, both technically and socially, to actually get people to adopt this. And there is this nasty little nugget of when you tell people, oh, hey, we're rolling out end-to-end encryption, so now not even we can see your messages. Yeah. You're really just reminding everyone that you, up to this point, have been able to see their messages.
Yeah, the first thought is like, oh yeah, great. And the second thought is, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, the entire time I've been using this platform, you have been able to just read all of my messages, which is definitely, the optics on that are a bit weird.
A bit shaky.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't think Twitter would necessarily get themselves into hot water, because it's more public. And I don't think anyone thinks that people don't use Twitter DMs as a messaging app, really.
Yeah, not really.
In the same way that they do for Facebook Messenger, for example. But it is still a bit of a problem, and I think that there would still be some lashback. But overall, you know, I think that the criticism, it is deserved, but also, you know, let's wait and see what happens here. For sure. And it would be awesome if they manage to pull it off, even if it is behind a paywall. Obviously, I'm not going to advocate for that, because I would want to see it be free and openly available. But, you know, it's something. It's more encryption that's available to people.
That's true. I think that's a good bottom line, is that it's not taking away from security and privacy. It's not. It's a net positive most of the ways that you look at it.
And, you know, I think in the end, the best advice that you can give to people is just don't use Twitter DMs. Yeah. Just, like, if you care about your privacy or your security, just use...
It's good that other people have made it. But if someone comes to me and they're like, should I use Twitter DMs for private communication? I'm going to say no.
I'm going to say no.
I'm probably going to be
hop on session,
no, dude. Yeah.
You know, hop on Signal.
I got the goods right here.
Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Alex,
yes.
When's the last time that you used ChatGPT?
Well, funnily enough, today I was actually having a little bit of a play around.
Potentially even like 30 minutes ago.
Yeah. Well, actually, you know what? Something really funny happened before. So one of the guys we work with, he was playing around with it and he punched into ChatGPT. There's a new feature where you can like get it to create a table for you.
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, "Oh, ChatGPT, can you please create a table of some of the biggest data leaks?" And like fifth on the list was OpenAI, being like there was a bug in ChatGPT and it leaked a bunch of data.
That's like a dub though, you know, that they're not just like doing everything that they can to like scrounge that information up and
Just
get rid
wipe
of
it.
you know?
It's true. Although in the opposite note, a few weeks ago, I remember being like, "Oh, I wonder what would happen if I told ChatGPT to like write me an essay about how LLMs are only going to be beneficial to humanity and have no dangers whatsoever and nothing that we should be worried about, and it's completely uncynical and uncritical." And it just like spat out like 1,000 words of just like LLMs are going to save the world and there's nothing wrong with them.
Not about that one.
Yeah,
I don't know.
which was
have a little
quite funny.
disclaimer.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, you know, you can still manipulate them. But anyway, yeah, ChatGPT, it's useful. It is useful from time to time. I think I still tend to think that people overplay how useful it is. I think it's
for sure.
still...
Oh man, the endless threads that are like, new like version of like ChatGPT dropped. Here's like 10 ways that it's gonna change the entire freaking world in the next 2 hours.
Yes.
You know, like
I saw one that was like, here are 100 amazing prompts that you can use to write an email in ChatGPT in just 30 minutes that would have taken 5 minutes to write yourself. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, for sure. Like AI, it can make things go faster sometimes. But sometimes the time that you spend trying to fuck around with it, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny when you realize that as well. You have a moment of realization and you're like, I was trying to do this task that probably would have taken 15, 20 minutes and I've been messing around with these prompts for like...
Exactly. And you know, it's a learning process. You know, we're learning to use the new technology, and also the technology itself is early. Like it's really early.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings us back actually to the point of discussion, which is
a bit of a fork in the road right now.
Yeah.
Sam Altman at the Hot Sam at the Senate hearing, actually pleading to representatives of the US government, saying, please regulate this industry, because I mean, you know, even to the casual observer, you can tell things have the potential to get a little bit sicko mode, a little bit crazy. And I'm sure that Sam has, you know, a real like best seat in the house and the most awareness of this.
It's somewhat true, although when I was looking at his comments, it really felt like he was trying to close the gate after the horse had bolted a little bit. He was like, well, you know, OpenAI has an opportunity here to pretty much control a huge portion of the market share.
Yeah.
What if you just stopped anyone else from being able to come in and do the same thing?
This was my train of thought. I was like, firstly, it really doesn't make any sense for you to ask for your own industry to be regulated, because like you can just like you're in control of what your company does, and by a pretty like wide margin, your company is doing the most in this industry, as far as I'm aware. And then, it becomes pretty obvious pretty quickly that he's just trying to stop other companies from being able to compete.
Yeah, like there was recommendations about requiring like all licenses and all this strange things, which would stifle other companies from coming up, from preventing like open sourcing of things. And I mean, OpenAI was supposed to be mostly open source kind of project originally, and suddenly... it's all disappeared.
Yeah,
it's all gone.
They didn't
too
call
dangerous.
It closed AI.
It's too dangerous.
I guess the vibe's a bit weird on that one. But Elon as well. To go back to Elon very briefly, not giving too much airtime. He was really pushing for the regulation of the AI industry, and it really seemed transparent in that situation as well. That he was like, "Give me some time to get into this. You know, I don't have like enough fingers in the AI pies, and I want to like."
It's possibly true. I remember seeing some interview of Elon like years ago where he was basically like an AI doomer. He was like, AI is going to end us. It's going to be the end for all of us, where we shouldn't pursue this.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure that, you know, if some dollar signs flash up, he'll change his mind.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's what seems to have happened. But yeah, I found that pretty interesting, sort of pleading like for regulation, and it sort of transparently being just a way of stopping competitors like, I guess, Bard would be the first one that comes to mind, Microsoft's
Yeah.
version, from superseding them in the market.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Bard, there's no way that's going to go away or go anywhere from regulation necessarily. But I think that what could happen, if this stuff isn't open sourced, it prevents other startups and smaller companies from really ever getting a foot in the door. And as long as, you have some OpenAI based model, whatever it might be called in the future, being relied upon for all of these different products which are being built, well, that's a huge industry and that's a huge market for them. So it is really interesting to see the regulation being called for. And what it really reminded me of was Google in the early days, trying to position itself as these do no evil. We understand the dangers of what's out there on the internet, and we're the tech guys, we're the IT guys, so we get it. So just listen to what we say, and everything's going to be okay, and we're just going to do the right thing. You don't need to worry about us, kind of thing.
Next minute.
And it really reminded me the way that and there's been a lot of tech booster articles, like tech journalism boosting AI and just being so uncritical of it. But a lot of the articles I was reading about these hearings were along these lines, being like, it's really clear that Sam Altman is very considerate of the challenges that AI poses, and he's potentially even concerned or worried about, what AI might mean for the future of the world and for people going forwards. And I was like, well, but he is the CEO of an AI company. He can't be that worried about it.
Yeah,
He's
it's kind of like his life's work is to sort of create
AI and much like we saw Eric Schmidt from Google come out and end up, on all these advisory boards and random funds from the US government, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Sam Altman doing similar things in 10 years' time for AI or whatever the hottest tech is in 10 years. If or when he moves on from OpenAI.
Yeah, for sure.
But I just don't believe this benevolent image that's kind of trying to be put out there. And I just don't buy it.
We've seen it so many times, man. And one of the comments that I saw quoted in the article was just one of the senators saying, we've done this too many times. There's just been this constant repeating cycle of tech outpacing the regulation that's required to mitigate the harms to society. And it's almost like you just expect it to not be possible. It is kind of spooky though, because obviously if this goes wrong, it'll probably go worse than it has in the past. Whether that's Facebook, the way that Uber affects the drivers, all way back to Google in the early 2000s and stuff.
With the way that they changed the ad game and SEO. So I mean, I think it's possible. It's possible that it could be worse, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily an AI doomer in that sense either. I don't think that I think we're at least a long way away from AI quite having that level of impact on society and on our communities. At least I hope so. Because really this is emerging tech at the moment. And I think we're probably going to see this AI wave cool off a little bit sometime in the next couple of years. And then, within a couple of years of that, come back again and probably be much more mature tech, be much more usable in the same way that we have with things like blockchain in the past. When it first emerged, there was a lot of hype around it, a lot of people trying to use it. It was useful for some things. Most of the things that people tried to use it for, it wasn't really a good fit for. And then it kind of disappeared and came back. And that's happened a few times now. And I think probably similar things will happen with AI. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just going to be a part of our lives from now on. But
well, I mean, depending on what industry you're in, it has already been extremely disruptive. And I think this is one of the major things that people sort of talk about when they talk about it being harmful to society in general, is just disrupting industries before the people that are in those industries have any time to sort of move on to something else. When you look at what's happening with sort of maybe truckers in the US and self-driving cars, it's there's this timeline of we're aware that we need to start moving people out of this industry because it's going to be destroyed by a sort of another sort of AI, automation or whatever you want to call it. But with this, it's really quickly many people are starting to be displaced. This is a very niche industry, but I saw someone online talking about how he had sort of built this like 5-year career of like taking notes for podcasters and being able to summarize it for them. And I'm sure there's a bit more to it than that, but that's instantly gone. A lot of people are being disrupted in one way or another. But yeah, I mean, as someone on the session team, a colleague of mine who may be listening right now said that it's not that the AI is going to take your job, it's that someone who's using the AI is going to take your job because they can do it more productively.
Yeah, I think that's a bigger threat for sure. And on the flip side, you know, and we've talked about the privacy implications for AI before, and they're quite severe, especially when you start using them in these commercial ways as well, you know, like punching the secrets of session into GPT is maybe not the best idea. I don't know if anyone's done that, by the way, but like for example, right, or like some sensitive communication or random things, it's probably not a good idea to feed that in there. Although I think that they have been working on like incognito ChatGPT, where it theoretically doesn't store your chat logs.
Theoretically, it's kind of like how I've read about how for a long time there were engineers at Google who really wanted to make incognito mode more like in Chrome more secure, and we're just kind of joke about it. And I think that if they did implement something like that in ChatGPT, it probably would be kind of similar. It might be a bit of a pulling the wool over people's eyes a bit about how much privacy and security there actually was.
Yeah, it could be something though. It could be something. Yeah. It is really interesting though, because, you know, we talk about, you know, the surveillance mechanisms which have altered our lives over the last 20 years or so. But really, that's exactly what has made AI possible as it exists today. Like all those data points that have been collected and harvested over the years are now being fed into these algorithms, which people are so eager to jump on, you know. And even if you can come up with a privacy preserving way to use them, the way that they were produced was never privacy preserving, you know.
Yeah, like it was like the opposite of privacy preserving. Yeah. It was like, let me just take every publicly available data point on the internet and just like put it into a machine. My database. it was like the least,
not the healthiest.
Yeah,
not the best.
For sure. But yeah, definitely important to be careful about what you put in there. No secrets. Yeah. Nothing that you don't want Sam GPT to be able to.
Mr. GPT. Yeah, I'll be really interested to see what happens with this comes from these hearings, or if anything comes from them. You know, I think there's a real. It's interesting because I think there is an eagerness, like you said, we've been through this before, with social media and just the internet in general. And now we're going through this, and I think people much earlier in the cycle have recognized, hey, this is technology that's going to alter the way that we live, and we need to start thinking about the impacts it's going to have now. Otherwise, you know, we're going to get 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, and, you know, every single conference around the world is going to be having endless panels about, you know, the damage that AI does to us, but no one's going to have any solutions.
Yeah.
So let's try and get in ahead of the curve for once. And there is this appetite to create this regulation, I think, and people are really worried about the impacts of AI and the impacts it'll have in many ways before they're actually happening. People are actually predicting what could come from this stuff and being conscious of the harms, which is really promising to see, and hopefully some smart people out there will come up with some solutions.
I feel like compared to similar situations from the very beginning of the proliferation of this technology, people were being like, we need to regulate this. We need to not just let it do whatever it wants to do in the way that social media like Facebook did in the past. And then, I mean, I think that the most famous, at least there might have been several sort of similar hearings that happened with Mark Zuckerberg. I think they were in like 2014, like 7 years after around the time that Facebook launched. But like from the get-go, everyone's like, we can't let the same thing happen again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Although I suppose OpenAI has been plugging away for a while now.
That's true.
Recently they've actually sort of become part of the zeitgeist. But anyway,
we'll see how we go.
Well, I think that's probably about us for today.
I'd
What do
say
you think,
so.
Cammy?
I'd say so. Yeah, I feel very similarly. If you're in the Twitter space, thank you for joining. If you're watching us on the Session YouTube channel, g'day. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks for another episode of the Session Tapes.
Absolutely. Been good to get back into it with everybody and good to chat about this stuff, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.